This course is basically designed for the academic study of social media, and the main purpose is educational. But people often ask us, well, can this research also be used for any more sort of immediate or practical purposes? So here we're going to look at two examples based on the English fieldwork.
Hello, my name's Kimberly McLaughlin and I'm a family therapist and Director of Supportive Care at the Hospice of St Francis in Berkhamsted. We care for patients who have been diagnosed with cancer or another long-term serious illness. So over the last 2 years, Danny and I have taken a day a week to interview patients. And we've asked patients about communication and specifically media communication. Through Danny's wider research, what we found is that people in England really do keep their distance from each other, even in the most rural of areas. And this can go a long way to explaining why we see so much loneliness and isolation. On a more positive note, however, we've seen some really exciting examples of how patients have connected with each other through social media.
So here, one of the hospice patients, Matt Marshall, talks about his experience with Facebook prior to his death.
I'm Matt Marshall, 41 years of age. I grew up in Yorkshire, Bradford, went to university in the Midlands and then came south. I've been living in Berkhamsted now for 19 years. Priorities will keep a good work-life balance. I'd like to socialise down the pub with my friends, play football, go out of an evening. Quite driven at work, very ambitious, and then obviously that all changed. I knew I was ill. I knew there was something wrong. I knew there was something seriously wrong, if I admit it now. But there was an element of denial as well. I made an announcement globally, if you like, to my friends on Facebook. I thought, well, this is the best way to do it, one hit. If I was getting engaged or married or had a baby, it'd be straight on there.
Yeah, exactly.
This is equally, important news, but negative. Yeah, I mean, writing it and posting it, when I pressed post, I didn't see it. Yeah. Because it became real.
Yeah.
It all became very real. When I came out of intensive care, I turned around and I took a picture of the bed and I posted it to Facebook.
Did you?
Yeah, of the intensive care bed. Said, goodbye intensive care, I hope we never meet again. And posted it, and great support. One of the girls I know has always said that when I was a bit heavier, I had a fuller face and a thicker jawline. She always said I looked like Mr. Incredible from the cartoons. Okay. And she referenced, you'll beat this Mr. Incredible, so.
At this point, we planned for more films and interviews, but having been told that he was clear of cancer, Matt's condition deteriorated and sadly, he passed away. In retrospect, I feel this selfie is a profound reflection on Matt's use of Facebook. Matt noted several times that posting on Facebook was just as much a means to acknowledge to himself his experience of the disease and anticipated recovery as it was about telling other people. A mirror selfie is a succinct expression of this process.
But to all intents and purposes, had you not known, I don't think you'd have known I was ill in that photo. So that's what I wanted to share. Yeah, I mean, I was stood up. I had some colour in my cheeks, I still had my hair. All was good with the world.
At the other end of the age scale, we worked with 4 secondary schools. And what we found was that teenagers now make extensive use of Twitter for behaviour such as sort of taunting each other. Now, the ages from 13 to 17 are difficult, especially for girls, associated with low self-esteem and issues such as self-cutting or anorexia. Now, while we didn't find that social media makes these problems worse, it was clear that this is now the place where a lot of this negative social interaction actually happens. So along with the pupils, we made a film about an example of this behaviour, which they call Twitter beef.
Beef is like a slang word for fights. Because it's very public Twitter, especially year 11, because our year 11 people, when they have an argument, someone will be like, oh, they're arguing again. And the whole conversation comes on Twitter and loads of people start favouriting it and replying to that tweet. It can explode quite quickly.
So our research led to rather different conclusions from the main literature on cyberbullying. Because if you start with bully, then you try and look for identifiable characters, such as the victim or the perpetrator. Now, while they exist, we found a more kind of general genre where people someday would be in one role and then they might move to another role. So we'd suggest that maybe you'd get more effective policy if you looked at this wider pattern rather than trying to find apparently identifiable characters. These two examples show that it is possible to use our research for practical purposes. But our main goal is education, so that we can all gain a better understanding of the use and consequences of social media.